kind of like they're bowling, right? Flies. Flies. Next is, I had him too. So the draw, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important things that you're going to learn as a new shooter. The reason being is that the draw, in my opinion, is the foundation for everything else that you're going to do with the gun. If you have a bad foundation, just like in martial arts, you won't be able to throw good kicks because you'll be, if your legs are crossed, you're trying to kick around that lead leg. That doesn't work. If you have poor balance and bad foot position, you won't be able to throw really good punches because you can't get that power that you need out of them. So just like in martial arts, your foundation, if your foundation is garbage, everything else that comes after it is going to be garbage. Well, the same thing could be said about the draw. To grab the gun and present it, if you don't have a good draw, the gun is going to be canted one way or the other because you haven't figured out where you need to place your hand to get a good draw. You just need to have a good foundation, and this is where you build it, is from right here. Once you grab that gun, that's where your hand should be to do all the shooting. So to talk about the draw and the way that I teach it, when you start your draw, you're going to move both hands in unison and at the same time, which is what in unison means, right? So your hands start to move. You're going to take your support hand and it's going to come up high to right about where your solar plexus are. And your other hand is going to get a hold of the gun. The reason why this hand comes up higher than this one is this is where the gun is going to be. So once you draw, it allows you to just marry the two together and then press out. You'll see some people do this and then start to move this hand. We don't want that because you're more likely to flag your own hand with the muzzle of the gun. That's bad juju. And the other reason, the other thing that you see people do is they'll draw like this and their hand is very low. And that causes them to, as they start to draw and present the gun, this hand is trying to catch the gun at some point, right? Where it's easier for the gun to come to this hand than it is for this hand to meet the gun in motion. So both hands up, gun comes out, and then they marry, right? The other thing that I do is I don't draw with my with my fingers facing that way or pointing that way. I don't draw with my fingers pointing that way. They point down. And the reason why that is that locks this into position. So when we get a good grip on the gun, we want this open space, right? And then we point our hand out like this and then we marry it to the gun so. And the reason why I do this from here is as I start to present, this is already in the position that it needs to be as it's presenting out. If I had my hand like this and I tried to scoop the gun, I'm then trying to rotate my wrist into position as I'm extending.
Well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
So that's why the hand is here. It's locked out and in this position and it's up high. The second thing, or third, fourth, I don't know where I'm at. The other thing is once we grab the gun, we want to make sure that we're high up on the back strap of the gun. We want to be high up in here. We don't want to be down low with all this space because if you have space here, when the gun is firing, it will cam over your wrist. You won't have as good recoil management. So you want to be as high as you can be so that way the gun doesn't want to flip over the top of your hand while you shoot. So make sure we have a good purchase here, and then when we draw straight up. We just draw with our elbow. That's the way I explain it. You just lift with your elbow, and then from here you keep this locked. So this is kind of like in this position here. And the reason why we're going to keep this like this is as we draw here, that's locked. We just drop our elbow to here. We're not dropping our shoulder, we're just dropping our elbow. Once you've done that, the gun should be close to being in level with the ground and pointing down range. So, and I do know that there are people who teach that when you draw to pull the gun up and then they twist their wrist to get the gun to point down range sooner. This is a good technique, but it is not a good technique for new shooters in my opinion. And the reason why is because they have a billion new things going on, and this is what's going to happen. They're going to draw the gun, they're going to flick their wrist, and then they're going to start to present the gun out. and then it is going to be facing skyward, and then they are going to fish the gun down into position. So it's not that I don't like this, I just don't think it's good for new shooters. I think that this is for when you're learning self-defense shooting from in close, and once you've become more proficient with your firearm, this is fine. You'll usually see it being implemented something like this, where it's in close and you need to create space using a firearm, or to even pectoral index, which was introduced by Craig Douglas. So look him up, real interesting stuff. But as far as new shooters, I think that coming up and maintaining this and then pressing straight out is a lot better than telling them to try and flick their wrist and then present out and keep it level as they're presenting the gun. So that's my thought on that. So you come here, it comes up, and it drops to here. And as you drop it to here, you can bring your support hand in to meet the gun. And then you just simply press out. And because the gun is already level to the deck, you are able to keep the muzzle flat and not be bowling or fishing while you're presenting the firearm. So let's kind of talk about the bowling and fishing. Bowling is when you see people draw the gun and they come up this way. It's kind of like they're bowling, right? The next is the fishing. So this is like fishing, right? Like you're casting a line. And the problem with bowling and fishing is one, so let's say that I needed to shoot the center of the lens, right? So if I came out this way and I started bowling, I can't shoot until I'm right about there, okay? If I'm gonna fish, I can't shoot until I'm right about there. But if I came out here and I did this, I could probably shoot, I could shoot right here and I'm still got a lot of movement in there. The other thing about it is with speed, kind of like Mario, if you've ever played the original Mario Brothers, and he's running, and then he like has to like stop, and you see him slide across the screen and comes back. Same thing. If I'm coming this way and I'm moving fast, I'm gonna come past the spot, and then I'm gonna have to rebound to where I want to shoot. Same with coming down, I'd end up stopping and coming up. But if I'm pressing straight out, I might go a little bit further than I want and come back, but I'm still on target while all that's happening. So that's one of the reasons why I want to make sure that we're punching straight out as opposed to fishing or bowling with the gun. So almost as important, but not quite, but yet still very important, is reholstering the gun. When you've presented and are done shooting, everything comes back in the same way that it went out. You bring it in, hand comes to your chest, elbow comes back, gun goes down, making sure your finger is not in the trigger guard, and holster, and you're done. So yeah, so once the gun comes up, hands are here, drop your elbow, gun meets, and press straight out. And once you've gotten to this point, go ahead and come back in and out. Back in and out. Back in and out. And just do that a bunch of times, really slow, just making sure that you're not doing this with the gun, that you're keeping it very straight and level as you press out. And try and look at your target and then bring your sights to where you're looking. If you see the top of the gun come down, then try it again and level it out. If you see coming up, try it again and do it right. Once you have the basic motion down, keeping your finger along the frame of the gun, make sure that you just do that a bunch of times, and then once you have that, I want you to press out, finger on the trigger, finger off the trigger, back in. Press out, finger on the trigger, finger on the frame, back out, in. Out, trigger, off trigger, back in. This is going to teach you so that way when you bring the gun back in, you're not leaving your finger on the trigger. It'll condition you to, as you pull in, get your finger off the trigger, and that'll prevent you from having your finger in the trigger guard when you reholster your firearm.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.